Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking around after the film for this Q&A. We're going to bring out the co-directors in just a little bit. My name is Ernie Quiroz, one of the co-directors of the Loft Film Festival. So happy to be back after taking a year off, back in person. We wish we could have more filmmakers in person, but we're still in the pandemic and we're still sort of figuring things out, and we still want to keep everyone safe. So thank you for that. For the scaled down version of this Loft Film Festival. This film, Imperfect, is eligible for the Audience Award, so you should have gotten a ballot. All you do is rip through the number that you want to give this film, 1 through 5, 5 being best. You don't need a pen or pencil, just physically tear through the number. We will collect those at the exit on your way out. If you happen to get into the theater, you didn't get a ballot, there's ballots there. There should be a volunteer there at the station that can give you a ballot, and then you can vote. So, and then we will be announcing the winner of both this Audience Award and the Jury Award on closing night. So that'll be next Thursday. So stay tuned for that. Plenty of films to watch between now and then. Thank you so much. So with that, let's go ahead and bring out our co-directors. We have Regan and Brian. Thank you so much for joining us for this quick chat about your film.
Thanks, Ernie.
Talk about, so I'm sure everyone, if they didn't realize before, Regan, you're artistic director of Family. You're in the film. How did the film project become an idea? I mean, you're like, it's not enough to make a play. You're like, hey, what the heck? Let's make a movie about it at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, as if there's not enough going on when you're putting on a musical anyway. We thought we'd just, add as many projects in as possible. Yeah, and just to correct or clarify, I'm former artistic director now because, as well, probably you saw at the end of the film, I actually left my position there, but still very much a fan. But yeah, Brian and I have worked together for a number of years through different projects. The rehab that I went to here in Denver after my injury, Craig Hospital, we worked on some educational videos there together. And Brian, being an esteemed, very experienced filmmaker, I told him I had always wanted to make a documentary about family. And as we were approaching the 30th anniversary of Family and the show Chicago, we thought, oh, maybe this is a good time to do it. So kind of threw it out there, and he said yes, and then he threw it back to me to be co-director, and I said yes, and the rest is history, I guess.
Brian, talk about from your point of view of putting this project together and working with Regan.
Yeah, so Regan and I we're fast friends. We got to know each other years ago, and I always am on the lookout for great stories about things that and about people that are not often told. Maybe an opportunity in an entertaining way, an informative way, and something that's fresh in cinema that you don't often get to see. And I think Regan will tell you that oftentimes when there are films about people with disabilities, a lot of times it's somewhat patronizing, like a good for you or a pat on the back kind of a story, and there's a definite element of saccharine in the storylines. So I'm interested in extracting the saccharine out of the story, and as a working journalist, with a strong news documentary background, I really wanted to just tell a story without any superfluous layers of what Regan calls inspiration porn on top. So sorry, that's my mom calling, and I have to mute that. Anyway. I'll get to her later. There's what I saw when I went to see a family theater show, was a lot of very talented people who are otherwise overlooked in society. And to me, that's a very interesting story from a documentary point of view. So when I saw that and was just kind of wowed by the amount of talent on stage, that's the kind of thing that just said, there's a great story here, and I don't know how exactly we're going to tell it yet, but
yeah. So Regan, you talk about, I think I read it in an interview where, to sort of Brian's point, that you want to portray disabled people, as humans, and it sounds so easy. It sounds so simple when you say it, but for all their flaws and everything, you want to show that, there are disabled people that are assholes. There are disabled people, not everyone's nice, and that they're surprised, they're sexual creatures, and that you see that in Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does sound so simple, right? And so obvious, but unfortunately, the disability community is still marginalized and dehumanized in a lot of ways in our society. A lot of people, we don't give the disability community the healthcare that they need or the jobs that they need. A lot of folks in the disability community are just omitted from things that the rest of us or that non-disabled folks have great and easy access to. And as Brian said, I think often when disability is woven into a narrative, it either falls, in the kind of villain, I'm angry, I'm frustrated about being a disabled person, and therefore I'm just going to be pissed at life and, sour all the time. Or it is that kind of inspirational narrative that makes everybody else feel better about themselves. But there's a whole swath, a whole spectrum in between those two polarities. And so we just really wanted to say, hey, let's cover like what are people with disabilities that are also artists, and creative, which is one of the hardest things to do anyway, is get up on stage in front of somebody. But then they also live lives outside of the theater. They're taking care of people, they're being taken care of, they are moving to new cities and starting new lives and things like that. So I think we really wanted to just try to humanize people with disabilities and remove some of the fear, remove some of the uncertainty and the stigma that we still very much have in our society around disability, even though 1 in 5 people in this country lives with some sort of a disability. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, you do a good job of let's not label people or put them in a box. And I think abled people, they do that for their own comfort and their own safety. Is like, okay, well, I can kind of put them in this box, and maybe I don't need to think about them, all the time. But then also to your point of where 1 in 5 people, it's not always a visible disability. I think that's sort of been a new thing within the disabled community, is recognizing mental health and some of the mental health issues that people have.
Yeah, and I think that was something that we were very intentional. I mean, family in general is very intentional about including people with all different types of disabilities: physical, cognitive, intellectual, emotional, visible and invisible. And in this film too, we were very intentional about, we want to make sure that we show a wide range of disabilities, folks who have, like Leonard, where it's invisible and it is very mysterious and unconventional, all the way to somebody like Adam, who has a very kind of clear reason, clear diagnosis that he's living with cerebral palsy. So it's important to, and still we could have had 100 more people in this film to show the true breadth and width of what the disability identity is.
Yeah, talk a little bit about how it was to get the actors to be in this film. I mean, actors on one level, I mean, obviously you're putting yourself out there. It's a very personal thing, but then to be on camera, be on film, and to see some of those other moments, that's a whole nother level of intimacy. Can you talk about sort of getting them on board and how that played into the project?
Yeah, it was interesting. I'll say that. On the one hand, they're actors and they're starving for attention. They want to be on camera and that kind of thing, which is great. I actually go through this when I make films. There's an evolution that I notice in characters that or subjects in documentary filmmaking. Some people, depending on their personality, are gung ho right at the outset, and then over time they realize you're observing their human behavior, and then they start figuring out, oh, wait a minute, what did I just say? And so you notice kind of a change in behavior. Other folks start off a little more timid, frankly, and then when they realize, you know, what you're doing, they kind of become invested in the process, and they understand kind of the humanity that we're trying to bring. I mean, I would say throughout the entire process, you know, we wanted to be completely honest, completely candid. Like I had said before, no saccharine here, but we also want to be respectful. We want to make sure we didn't throw anyone under the bus, or we weren't demeaning anyone. Because the whole notion of this film, the whole underlying notion of this film, is to show that people, no matter whether they have a disability or not or whatever, we're all flawed. We're all imperfect in some way. And I feel like that's okay. I feel like oftentimes in the society that we live in, we have this constant push or constant messaging, advertising, whatever you want to call it, that we have to look a certain way. We have to present ourselves a certain way. We have to always be perfect. And the truth is that we're all imperfect, and that's okay. And that's what makes us human, and that's actually what makes so many of the characters in this film beautiful, in my opinion. And it's you know, I spend most of my documentary career living in the dark annals of society, digging up dirt on some of the darkest places in culture, whether it be environmental or you know, social issues or whatever. And I would say that this personally was such a delight to depart from that more investigative side of journalism and really just kind of get into the human side, because this film really showed and taught me a lot about just kind of like the spirit of the human being and what the human being is actually capable of, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So to sort of talk about sort of these human moments, there's one moment right before opening night, Regan, where you just break down and you're like, you know, have you set these people up to fail? And I think that was so, you know, courageous for you to put that out there, to have that on camera, you know, and sort of admit that. So maybe take us back to sort of some of the things that you were thinking of, like, you obviously you want this play to succeed. You want to, you know, like you said, have them in this musical, but are you setting them up for failure?
Yeah, well, and anyone who's worked in theater, musical theater, really any sort of performance artist realm, you know, just the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into it through the whole process. And I think in family, there is the added layer of you have a bunch of individual, unique people that have unique needs, and our job in family is to remove any barriers for them so that they can do their best work. And that does come with extra stress, you know. So dealing with all the usual stress of, like, is the set being built? Is the lighting going to work? Is, you know, the sound bouncing off the walls so much that it's affecting the actors? And then on top of that, are actors having seizures? Are actors, you know, breaking down themselves? Are they actually, what you didn't see in the film is one of our lead actors, Erin Schneider, who played Velma Kelly, ended up using a wheelchair later in the run because she her MS was acting up. And so, you know, trying to balance all those things, it becomes a lot. And I think that moment was very important. You know, as Brian would tell you, I was somewhat hesitant about putting myself into the film as a whole, you know, all along. But I kind of removed myself and said, look, this is a character, this is a vessel. This character is really important because she's leading, you know, she's the director of the show. And I do have to say that moment is probably what a lot of, particularly artist friends of mine that have seen the show, respond to the most, because I think any of us who are artists, at some point that self-doubt comes in. But it's often what we're not honest about, is like, oh shit, am I doing the right thing? Is this a good idea? Oh my God, is this going to be successful? So I'm really happy that we put that part in the film, because I hope that everybody has a moment in their own lives, whether they're artists or not. We all deal with self-doubt, and yet then you push through it, and those are the moments of courage and the greatest moments of triumph, when you can kind of work through that self-doubt and find your way to, at least in this instance, was a very successful production and experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, also, you are the leader. And as a leader, you need to project that self confidence, and you don't want, you know, uh, everyone has their self doubt, but you don't want to maybe feed into that, or so there's a whole nother level of what you need to project as a leader.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, there's a camera sticking in your face the entire time too.
Yeah. But we've got about 4 minutes left, so before we run out of time, I want to make sure to get some updates and catch up with what everyone's doing, new projects, current projects. I know, Regan, so you're no longer with family. You're in Maryland, is that right, or Washington D.C. or?
Where am I? No,
Yeah.
I'm currently still in Denver, because we were fortunate enough to also show the film at Denver Film Festival this week. So Denver and Loft, yay! But I will actually be heading to Washington D.C. to start rehearsals for a play that I'm going to be in at Arena Stage on December 20th. So I'll be out there, moving out there, and yeah, from there, hopefully doing a bunch of artistic projects of all different kinds moving forward.
And then Brian?
Well, I just got this guitar yesterday. I've been looking to get another Telecaster, so I have an old man band, and I'm learning some Thin Lizzy songs. So that's what I'm up to.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Very cool.
No, and the plans for the film are we have submitted to about a dozen festivals that we're still waiting to hear from, and we're hoping that we do kind of a mini tour. We're also kind of talking about maybe rolling the film out into kind of like the healthcare industry. Different hospitals, might show the film as a special event, or maybe working with some different, film societies around the country to do some one-off screenings, some special engagements, that kind of thing, just to kind of help get the word out about the film, and so that's kind of like the next phase of what I'm working on as far as the film goes.
Sure. And for people that are interested, what are your social media handles, websites? Is it just Imperfect Film, or?
Yeah, on Instagram it's Imperfect Film, and Facebook is Imperfect the Film. And I'm on Instagram at just Regan Linton. And Brian, do you have other handles to share?
Not me. I'm not a very social.
But and yeah, all of those are also, if you go to our website imperfectfilm.com, you can find all of them at imperfectfilm.com. And yeah, I'll just kind of add on to what Brian said. Our intention in making this film in the first place was that Family is it is a one-of-a-kind theater company that you don't find anywhere else in the country, in terms of the unique work that it does. And we really wanted people all over the place to know about that this exists and that it could be possible in their community. And so we're really passionate about taking the film to other communities, whether it be hospitals, whether it be schools, whether it be community centers, in the middle of nowhere, like, especially for those folks that maybe are living with disabilities and don't have a huge community to support them. We want them to know, they're not alone, and there are lots of possibilities available to them in this life. So we're hoping to get it out there far and wide.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wish you nothing but success. I do have to say, I know you're not going to toot your own horn, but I did do a little research. I know that Family was struggling before you came on board, and you really helped rescue that organization. And you were, from what I understand, the first artistic director of a theater troupe that was disabled, and you really become a national leader and an inspiration to other theaters groups nationwide. I know you're not going to say that, so I will say that.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you said it. Yeah, I'll hire you as my PR person. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I do want to finish off with a quote that you had, Regan. So you said, disability has also surprised many wonderful things. There are aspects of my life with a disability that I would never trade for the non-disabled experience, including deepened relationships, increased self-awareness, wicked humor, heightened social intelligence. But these things never get highlighted as connected to a disability, or if they are, people assume that they have developed in spite of a disability, not because of it.
Yes, that's true. All of it.
So I think that's. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I was just talking to a group yesterday about the concept of quote unquote disability gain, which I actually kind of pulled from the deaf community, because there's a concept of deaf gain of, a lot of non-disabled people, or in the context of deafness, hearing people only think about, deafness as a deficit in the context of loss. And a lot of non-disabled people who don't have disabilities only think of disability as a concept in the context of loss, and something that changes and is a negative thing. And I think many of us in the disability community would push back against that and say, you know what? There's actually a lot we gain from this experience. And yeah, I don't know that if I were to go back, I would say, I don't know. People have asked me, like, would you be paralyzed again if you had a choice not to be? And that's a really tough question, because I think it's expanded my life in so many ways, and I probably wouldn't be here having made a film had it not been for this this experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for making this film, for giving the visibility to the disabled community that it needs, and for hopefully, changing the able people, changing their perspective of the disabled community. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Okay, and then we will go ahead and end it there. And we will edit this out.
Okay, great.
But thank you guys.